to another Miniature Painting 101 series, part 15, Overbrushing. So, let's start off with the big question. What exactly is overbrushing? Well, overbrushing is a highlighting technique. It creates a solid appearance as opposed to dry brushing, which creates a more dusted appearance. And it's basically when you use the side of the brush and drag it almost parallel to the surface, picking up on the edges and raised surfaces, leaving the recesses darker. So why use overbrushing? Because it is a very, very quick highlighting technique. And it is quite effective on models that have a lot of raised surfaces. Why not? Well, first of all, it is a little bit wasteful, and it does lead to a very extreme highlight. So if you want a very nice blend, I do not recommend using this technique. What brush should you use? Pretty much any brush, which you'll see. I just use a standard brush that's very thin, and I will use its edges. And I'll be using today this Tyrannid Warrior, because as you can see, it has tons of raised areas and recesses. So this is a great model to use an overbrush on. So I'm going to use Ghost White as the highlight color on all of the non-carapace areas. As you can see, it already has been base coated and given a dark non-oil shade. So I'm going to take the Ghost White from Reaper and put it in my palette. For overbrushing, I don't recommend thinning down the paint because you want it to keep on the areas and not run. So I just run it on the edge of I load it on my brush and I just wipe it on a paper towel. Just make sure that it's evenly spread out along the brush. As you can see, it creates a slightly flat appearance on the brush, and that's what we're going for. You want a flat brush when using this technique. And as you can see, I'm just going to slowly drag the brush across the surface, almost parallel to the raised areas on the Tyrannid Warrior. And I'm just picking up those raised areas. And as you can see, after a single coat, there's a very solid highlight. And the Ghost White will go over very well over this dark blue surface. The reason why I like Ghost White is it has a touch of blue in it. It's a bit colder of a white and has a blue tinge to it. And there you go. See, I'm already picking up on those raised areas, and there's already a huge contrast between the ribs and the recesses. It's not a very easy blend. So that is why if you want a really nice blend between the colors, I recommend doing a dry brush. But with this type of model, it's great to use an overbrush. And as you can see, I'm just repeating this procedure on the arms, and you can see all the nice raised areas are already really sticking out on the model, and that's awesome. Tyrannids are a great army if you want to use an overbrush technique frequently. And there you go. So you can see a lot of the contrast on the hands. That is where there's some huge contrast between the recesses and the raised areas. And I'm just going to keep using the procedure. So as I said, the key is to make sure that when loading your brush, do not thin your paints, and make sure that the paint is evenly distributed along your brush and that you create that flat brush. That way it's much easier to go across the surfaces and to pick up on the raised areas. And now you can see the great detail in the face and the hands. And I'm just going to stop after a single highlight. That's how effective the overbrush is when highlighting. So for this tutorial, I'm going to be using overbrush over the entire model. So as I said, I'll just be going over this first part with the Ghost White. And on the back, you can see here, it creates a nice color on the tail. I actually prefer overbrushing as opposed to dry brushing on the tail, unless you want to go with multiple layers, because the solid appearance is what you really want to go for on the areas like the tail. As I said, the Tyrannid Warrior is a perfect example of some of the GW models that just look great with a very little amount of effort. That's what I like about the Overbrush. I use it frequently because it is a very quick and effective way to cover raised areas and leave the nice recesses a much darker tone. So now that I'm done with the Ghost White, I'm going to use Lothern Blue to overbrush the gun. Now I wouldn't necessarily use overbrush per se on the gun but in this case I decided to do it just to show the effectiveness on a bunch of different surfaces on the model. But once again, you can see it picks up on all the raised areas and has that nice gradient in the center of the gun. So only after a couple colors, the model's already really starting to take into effect, and it looks really nice. And now the gun is really nice. And now I'm going to just use Calidor Sky on the carapace. And once again, I'm just going to drag that brush parallel to the surface, and what I'm going to do is leave the indentations in the back of the armor and the carapace, that really nice dark blue, the combination of Calidor blue and Nuln Oil, and just pick up on the raised areas. And as you see now, there's already some really good tonal variation on the carapace, and definitely some really nice shading. On surfaces like the head, the best idea is actually to go perpendicular to the grain. As you can see, it's going from the front of his head to the back of his head. But if you do that, you run the risk of accidentally getting into the edges and ruining the shading. So as you can see here, I am going against the grain. It goes downward, but I'm going side to side, so that way I can make sure that the edges are shaded nicely. I'm just going to repeat this on the back. And the back is one of those areas that has a great amount of recesses, so you're going to see the best effect on it. And after the carapace was done, I used a red on the talons and the nails, and here's what the finished product looked like. Now, next week's Miniature Painting 101 will focus on the feathering technique that I used on the talons, so I decided to save that for the next part. And here's what the finished product looked like, and as you can see, with very little effort and time, I was able to produce a pretty good result. So thank you very much for watching this Miniature Painting 101. Stay tuned for the next part, where once again I will be covering feathering. And if you really like this video, check out The Warp. Click on the link below for a free 14-day trial to my premium YouTube channel, The Warp, where not only will you get to see the next at least 10 Miniature Painting 101s, you'll also get to see from start to finish several painting tutorials as well as some awesome battle reports. So go check it out. And until next time, this is Jay saying, happy painting, everyone.